Tonight's sermon is a combination entitled Preaching to the Converted, Entertainment, and the Matter of True Information. Or, why would anyone stand up publicly and talk about this stuff? Or, might as well get this out of the way tonight. Or, this sort of thing finally identified and named. Facts on the move. Just as a full stomach can absorb more poison than an empty one, so too can some kind of particular mental condition do something of a similar regarding thoughts and stuff. Hup, 2, 3, 4. Hup, 2, 3, 4. There was once a boy who was interested in things extraordinary, and one day he found a magical pair of glasses which existed for him for 30 seconds. And when he put them on and closed his left eye and looked at the world only through his right, he saw half of the planet's 6 billion people attempting to be mystics and help lead the other half. And when he closed his right eye and looked out with his left, he saw the situation suddenly reversed, with the other 3 billion now striving for transcendentality and a position of authoritative assistance. There was once a land of mystics whose meditative mantra was not but hup, left, right, left, right, left, right. Mortal existence, a poem. Life is hard, reality is tough, and local conditions don't take much guff. Left, right, left, right. While your car is being lubed, let's break it down one more time. When entertainment becomes serious, it's no longer entertainment. And no knowledgeable person ever mistakes seriousness for entertainment. The defining operational reality of this lies yet hidden deeply within uncharted areas of non-local physics. And though of a less disciplined approach, you might more easily gain an appreciation of the concept if you remember how quickly came the demise of vaudeville once men acquired a mental awareness of death. And so long as they still haven't greased your ball joints, and we're speaking of family and death, let me remind you that the word seriousness has but one true synonym, and father. Forget lingerie catalogs. The real adult novelties is this kind of thing. The power and purpose of proverbial wisdom. If you're floating downstream, it's good to have something to hold on to. A kid thought, let's do something exciting. Then thought, I'll grow up. A man thought, let's do something exciting. Then thought, I'll be more childlike. But then thought further, I can't do that. I'm a grown man with grown man duties and responsibilities. And life thought, why don't I do something new and exciting? Let's see, I could create an incomplete creature and enjoy watching him grow. And life rubbed its chin as it momentarily pondered whether such a creature itself would ever derive equal pleasure in witnessing its own evolution. If you want the inside story on this, I'll tell you. Life almost immediately forgot about the question and proceeded to produce man as you generally find him now, except for a few individuals here and somewhere who somehow slipped into reality via this initial brief reflection of life, by life. A viewer writes, I continue to find much of what you say as completely unexpected, even befuddling. Like a lot of times, I can't tell if what you say is sarcastic and critical or something else entirely. And it's this possibility that really drives me up the wall. I hear it, and yet it can't be so. I hear it, and sometimes it makes perfect sense, and yet it just can't be so. Being an employee of life, an essay. Life wants everyone to be satisfied. And if you don't like the word satisfied, try busy. And if you don't care for busy, try distracted. And if you don't like distracted, then get back to work and forget it. How life keeps too many people from trying to become mystics. It'll make most of the people who once believed they wanted to be mystics to become religious instead. And those that this ploy won't work on, life will make them believe that they actually have become mystics. Wow. When the king of one country faced up to the terrible physical condition of his daughter, he declared that her hand could be won only by he with a full frontal lobotomy. If you're not immediately struck by the meaning of this, then consider the fact that on most reputable campuses, the schools of medicine and of architecture are separate operations. Some men live alone, some men live with others. Some men with others live with others and yet alone, and some men live alone and yet even more alone. But no fangs live sans rattlers. When the king of one country finally realized the full nature of his state, he proudly announced that he and himself were now united and one on the throne. If you're going to take the ordinary games and hobbies and pursuits of life seriously, then you need to remember that it will be the serious who will win and succeed. The infrastructure of the intellectual city, a conversation. First voice. There is something that can be said about any topic man can come up with. Second voice. But it could be that man comes up with topics just so he'll have something about which something can be said. Third voice of an agent. I like it. I like the whole concept. Have me an outline by Friday. Anyone can see physical vices as a dumbing of the body, but few can carry it to the higher area of the intellect. The International Body Council has contacted us to complain about such matters as the above being brought to the public's attention. They say that it would be far better off filling this time slot with a good action movie or a situation comedy with a moral at the end. Hey, when you're right, you're right. And when you're in the majority, you're always right. The latest planetary census reveals the presence of more physical activities than intellectual ones. And the infinite cosmic beauty of it all, at least in local terms, is that on the playground, on the teeter-totter, you can have a prince on one end and an oaf on the other, or an athlete and a nerd, or an artist and a Philistine, and it changes not the balance of reality, in that goofs come and go, but seesaws are forever. The impermanence of impressions, or the uncertainty principle as applied to human feelings. A play. First actor. You sure can't depend on emotions. Second actor. Well, you can almost always depend on having some. First actor. Well, big deal. Curtain down, house lights up. There was once an artist who kept all of his botched creations, saying that they helped remind him of his always present potential fallibility and less than perfect talent. Another man said he didn't need all that he had himself. On this one world was once a band of men who thought of the physical universe as being an allegorical microcosm for their own mind. In some solar systems, if you stand a certain way at a certain time of day, you can conceive of the new appearance of the sun as being either the beginning of something or the end of something. Thus, in transcendental galleries, even a flawed piece of art will still have a price sticker on its bottom. Weak people most enjoy tales of weakness, not of strength. which is how religion came to be practiced only one day out of 7. On 35-year-old street corners, one man would sit with his guitar and sing the blues song, "Before you accuse me, take a look at yourself," only by age 50 to realize, hey, I am yourself. Consistency, a poem. Consistency is the key. Consistency is the key. Therefore, you should not forget, repetition sucks, repetition sucks, repetition sucks. The long-forgotten allegorical reason that men put flowers in cemeteries was to remind themselves of what grave damage solemnity can do to living plants. How can you identify a mystic? He leaves no footprints in soft stuff. One kid who grew up in a family of transcendental mechanics pictured other people's ideas as jumper cables. Related juicy gossip. The town fathers eventually requested that he never visit the public library again. Heat rises, which is why men's minds are on top. Well, applicable at least to some men. And germane to additional academic areas. This may be why most universities give the engineering school and the sexology department their own buildings. Which of course brings up the matter of their respective school fight songs. One being, "Work That Skirt," and the other entitled, "He's so intellectually well built that when seen from the rear walking, it looks like 2 Nobel scientists in a bag fighting to get out." A viewer writes, "I didn't know you were serious about all of this." The world of man, the birth and rebirth of this world. A commentary. The world of man, proposal, objection, acceptance, rejection, construction, demolition, point, counterpoint, invention, improvement, me, you. Beyond this lies only the realm of the mystic, wherein is no such rising and falling, pushing and pulling. Oh yeah, a poem. Oh yeah? Simpletons, and some of the ordinary, will try and take verbal responsibility for what they are. One who actually knows won't talk about it. How can you tell that a mystic's actually disappeared even if you still physically see him? Well, there are 2 ways. When a humorous one turns serious, and when a serious one ceases to be so. Now, the next question. If you don't know that the real mystic exists in your own head, then just what the hell do you know? Hey, is that supposed to be a joke or are you serious? Okay, bring on the next contestant, but be sure this one's already been to the restroom. You can overeat and you can overtalk, and the space between verbal meals can be the most nourishing. Without a sense of urgency, men won't bother with anything, either in the physical or intellectual realm. Does this explain mysticism's limited appeal? Do ducks carry umbrellas? Local Conditions contacted the show to say, that viewer who wrote in earlier should have known that this is serious stuff. In spite of what the collectively religious are made to believe, no one is spiritual who is not first an individual. Life sends this reminder. Local Conditions is not the final authority on what is serious and what is not. And later, seriousness popped in to ask if anyone had been talking about him. He said that his nose had been itching like a horny ram in an army blanket. One guy stopped to wonder, who but mystics and other weird sorts can actually enjoy hearing and thinking about things in a way that disturbs their normal neural equilibrium? God, what a weird bunch of people, he thought. I wonder where I might join up. A family health tip. If you have a child who ever shows any signs of being interested in non-standard explanations of things, encourage him to become angry as quickly as possible. The political philosophy of the wolf pack. There are but two types of alpha males: those who we like and respect, and those who frighten us. The real philosophy of the pack is practiced inside your head. The first mentioned type of leader is unknown to my way of thinking. Only those knowingly holding invisible tickets will actually ever take this trip. Whoop! We interrupt now for some late-breaking serious medical news. Although there are many symptoms, there is but one disease. Now back to your regular fog machine, programming. Regarding the alleged title of tonight's sermon, being a bit of humor, I don't know whether it's humor or not, we would call Preaching to the Converted, entertainment, and the matter of true information. Preaching to the converted, in case that is too colloquial for everyone's sophisticated experience, the term is derogatory in a sense. To say, why waste your time preaching to the converted, or to accuse someone to say, well, what he's talking about is not much because he's preaching to the converted. The basis of the accusation being that you have before you, whoever it is getting up and speaking, that they have before them an already converted, an already won over audience. And therefore, you understand that there is a certain negative connotation, to say the least, in the way it's normally used to say, well, all he's doing is preaching to the converted. Mm-hmm. So that if there is some sort of information, if there was some sort of, in preaching the converted, you understand the allegory was taken originally from religion. To use words like preaching and converted, that you've won somebody over. But the insinuation being that there is information available that would be of such a nature that if you heard it correctly, that it would win you over, that you could not stand up in the face of this new reality, this new information, and religion being, again, the prime example of so-called prophets of revealed new information that say they've got the Word of God, the latest Word of God, and that man is living in some distorted state that he is not fully apprised of what's going on, and therefore, if you will listen to this new word, you will be won over. That would seem to be serious business indeed, and would seem to be far removed from entertainment, which was part of the combination title you recall tonight. But let's consider, assuming I've made that clear enough, that to say someone's preaching the converted, you're saying that it's a moot act. You're saying that nothing is happening. The insinuation is even further that the person is some sort of fool. That is, if we were observing somebody preaching to the converted, that we walked in and there was some sort of meeting going on, and that there was someone in charge speaking up on stage, there was an audience, and the audience seemed to be engaged in very positive reaction to it. Lots of hears and ho-ho and, right on, brother, and yes, sir. And then you find out that you are the only stranger there, that you find out that this goes on week after week, and everyone there is already a card-carrying member, dues-paying member, figuratively speaking at least, of this operation. And yet you understand when you first heard it, let's say, that it struck you some combination between what you heard the person say and that which is not normally analyzed, which is the emotional byplay going on between the audience and the person. That is, even if you walked in and let's say they were speaking a language literally that you didn't understand, and you were about to leave, except suddenly the crowd, it was just the right kind of feel, that the audience would just begin, and just kept on, and you can enjoy it. without even knowing the language. I don't mean that you can sit there for hours and obviously get any sort of intellectual nourishment, literally, but you can get a feel. You can get an enjoyable feel, and you could think, you can skip now, that is an extreme example, but let's say you walked in and someone was just talking about an area you'd never heard instead of an absolute foreign language. Let us say that they were discussing spiritual matters. There seemed to be a religion that you had never heard of. And even the words, it was English, let's say, that you speak English, and it sort of made sense, but they were talking about spiritual matters, higher degrees of consciousness, or whatever. And it was in ways and using certain little terms, and that you could tell that there were inside references going on in certain sort of patented words they used among themselves, little clue words, and the crowd was really getting into it. And at first you might have thought, well, I don't know, and you start to walk out, and yet a kind of enthusiasm. There's no sense playing with words, it is emotion. But there was a kind of a kind of emotional enthusiasm going on between the two, that even if what you heard the speaker say did not strike you as of any great importance, or you couldn't really straighten it out, the enthusiasm can keep you there for a certain length of time. Then to find out that those people there were not all that enthused, not in the sense that you were naively enthused, that you came in as a virgin, that you came in as an innocent in this matter, and you heard it, and it just seemed that they kind of enthused you without you even knowing all that much about it. And there was an unspoken aspect of it, as I mentioned, of the crowd itself's response. And even though you would not necessarily, if you were an ordinary person, stand there and analyze it in this way, it would be unspokenly this, that, well, besides the emotional part now, that's all there is, but besides that, okay? What'd that mean? Besides that. Besides that. If you did have to analyze it, it would be on the basis that, well, this crowd just seems to be rather sane. I don't feel dangerous. And they seem to be enjoying it so much, there must be something to it. You don't have to analyze it that way intellectually. The emotions could hold you there. But I am saying that would be one possible intellectual rationale for why you stayed there. Not an untoward, not an unreasonable one. But then what if you found out later that you were the only person for the first time hearing that everyone else in there was an absolute convertee. They were an absolute regular member of the audience of this. You would then feel, quite likely, a bit cheated. You would feel as though, well, I kind of enjoyed that, but their enthusiasm could not have been totally real. It had to be some of it sham that was just either they're indoctrinated, they're hypnotized, or it's just most people couldn't carry it this far. That'd satisfy them. But it could be just the point of realizing, wait a minute, this is a good social dance and they're all enjoying themselves. What the hell do I care? Why am I worried about it? I thought I was getting something out of it. And if I did, why am I worried about that they no longer are? Which is a story almost into another universe, and we won't go into it. We'll stay in the one I'm already started, which is in a universe far enough away. So saying preaching the converted, to use that term, is indeed a slap. People intellectually who use that in its varying ways, but who would use it in that specific manner, do not mean it in any way other than an insult, an attack, a criticism. That who the hell wants to be around? What's the point of preaching the converted? Even if the person making the criticism was not involved, they would dismiss the operation. If you heard, well, there's a man over here speaking about some new religion, really, some new philosophy of life, but using religion in the easiest, historically most common form. If you said there's a man over here preaching some sort of new religion, some sort of spiritual teaching, and it seems to be brand new. Yeah, that goes on. Yeah, but boy, he's got a crowd. Yeah, that happens. You can get a crowd for anything. You can sell a new potato peeler. yeah, but he's got good people that show up. He's got intellectual people. They're not idiots. It's a cross-section of the middle class of humanity, and they are really taking it quite seriously. But then if you went over and found out that this crowd, if you stood sort of aside and tried to observe it, and it did seem to be a real good old camp meeting type, Amway for God or some stuff, that everybody's really excited, and if the guy does his part, it almost is choreographed, seems to be choreographed in a sense that, the guy goes, blah, 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 and people go, yeah, and blah, 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 ah, blah, 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 ah, and he goes, blah, 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 a few laughs and a few seriousness. It seems like it's almost really drawn out that he'll do a ha, 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 and they'll go, ha, 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 and then he'll go, ah, but da, 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 da. And he'll do a thoughtful one, and the crowd goes, hmm. And he sort of relieves their pressure, go, ah, but da, 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 da. And they go, ah. And you think, well, this is something important going on. And then you find out that everyone here has heard the same thing over and over and over. And you think, ah. You would feel a bit kind. You would feel a bit less interested, a bit less impressed, because you'd say, well, he's preaching the converted. Okay. Is that a segue or what? Okay. All right. Well, now let's talk about what has happened to the stock market. Since we have had these recent changes in the prime interest. How about a quick sidestep into some more of what could appear to be the kind of history of this kind of thing, mystical, traditional, great secret work stuff. And unless you're very simple-minded, the actual history that I was going to pull out is of no great consequence, whether it be historically true or not. It's as good as anybody else's, and much better as applied to one's own thinking, which is where it is of some use, unless you're a historian, and then it's of no use because I'm making it up. But wait a minute, it could be of some use. If you can sell it, you take it from there. Sell it as the new, revealed, recently discovered. The so-called mystical schools of whatever name, all the way from the mystery schools of Egypt and Greece into the Western Christian tradition in the Middle Ages of the mythological, I guess we just should leave it at mystical schools inside of Christianities, and the monasteries and the individual Christians and prophets and saints that seem to have their own personal vision, into dragging in things finally in the last couple hundred years into the Western mind from other more distant sources of like Sufism from Islam and the rise of interest in the mystical Zen side of Buddhism and all of the many aspects that's so easily interpretable and usable today from the Hindu literatures. So all of that, we have a full table full of would-be so-called mystical schools, traditions, ideas to draw from, and they're still going on today. Insofar as what these schools apparently, who they would apparently accept, the most historically constant, almost with no exception, if there's any really recorded history of what it took to get in such a school, one of the most common, may I suggest, requirement was having to do with age. That you had to be certainly mature, and in many, many cases they were more specific than that, according to all reports. That you had to be like to the point that your children, if you had children, well, you're supposed to have been a family decent person anyway, not some kind of weird person. So your children were supposed to be old enough now that they in no wise looked to you, that they were completely mature themselves. You had to be that old. So you're talking about somebody that's obviously past just the minimum threshold of being a grandfather. You're talking about somebody well into their years. Some of the schools even went a little further, by all reports, and even put in certain sub-classifications, such as you had to be able to afford to withdraw from active involvement in the economic life as it was then. In other words, to leave, assuming your wife was still alive, and if you had any other responsibilities, that you could look after everyone and now cease work. In other words, you could retire from life, more or less, and devote yourself to this school, this tradition, this monastery, should they let you in. Now that's the most common. And I could point out the validity of it, and it's not based upon them being rich, because it didn't say that you had to bring them money. It was that you could retire, you could withdraw from civilization, you could withdraw from the city without doing anyone else harm. You would leave no footprints on soft stuff. You would not hurt innocents in any way, other people, that you could now leave. That takes, with a normal person, there's no way around it. That takes age, chronological, real age that you have got to be well into your years. You can't be a kid. There are no records. I was going to make up and say there are very few records. Let me do that. That makes it sound more interesting. There are very few. I mean, I'll tell you how few. Well, the reason I was kidding around with it is that there are actually no written records. It is so obscure there's only a few people alive, such as, just a few of us that happen to have privy to certain information. Very few schools accepted anyone less than well into their years, much less to specifically say we will take only the young, that we would take only someone who is not yet married, only take someone who is not yet adult, by whatever standard they used. And it's changed from time to time, but let's say if we were talking about 5,000 years ago in Greece, Western Europe, or almost anywhere, it might say we would not take anyone over the age of 21, let's just say. Just will not. In the same way that some of the other schools at the other end, I was saying, rather than just the general classification or requirement that you must have now be free to withdraw from the economic life of the community without doing anyone any harm, and your children are on their own. So they might say no one allowed. Either that or you must be 65. Let's put it that way. No exception, just got to be 65. Then, very few schools, you've never even heard of them, that would say, over 21, you can't get in. What would be the purpose of that? Reminding you again that this has, unless you're just really hard up for entertainment, which is all right, I am not really talking about schools out there and that, even though it was true, that's only references and only applicable to the collective, because what it is what it does to you that I'm trying to get to momentarily. Unless we have a whole new definition of momentarily. Well, we do. I'm just a teacher to quit asking those dumb questions. Okay. What would be the dynamics involved with this, that they would only allow someone into a school, let's make it simple, into this kind of school, that the bare minimum requirement is you got to be 65 before we even talk, before we even find out if you're relatively sane or whether you actually have the right kind of interests. That's just the first thing. You walk up and they say, "Are you 65?" And you go, "Well, no, I'm 64." And then they just close the door. What would be the dynamics, the operational dynamics between that, and if there was a schools over here somewhere else that you walked in and you said, before they even found out why you were there, you just walked in the door and said, "I want to join." They said, "Well, how old are you?" And you say, 22. And they went, "Nope, too late." What would be the operational dynamics involved with this? There is, may I suggest, since we've talked about closed systems before, and that's all, that a mind working in a three-dimensional reality such as here on this planet, such as this reality, that's all that a polarized mind can conceive of are closed systems. That's just it. They can call it all kinds of things, and they've called it all kinds of things in religion, and right today they're calling it all sorts of speculative things in physics and cosmology. And they're still wrestling with the fact that a polarized mind, a partisan mind, a two-brained mind can only see within three dimensions a closed system. But one way that's not normally considered amongst others is that a closed system, you could also say, is how about an adult and a kid. But it is a closed system. And this closed system also reflects itself in all the old religious ideas of an afterlife, of reincarnation. They cannot just look at dead in the eye. They cannot look at point blank and realize that this is what's going on. So it's always a matter that seems vague and speculative enough that it's always after this life. Maybe if I die, the gods will revive me. Or maybe if I please the gods now, that they'll revive me. Or maybe I'll just come back and get another chance to do better. Without knowing it, they are continually describing the nature of closed systems. And without knowing the nature of what you're operating in, may I also suggest that you are at a certain, what shall we say, how about disadvantage? Well, you're ordinary, but you consider that a disadvantage only if you're exceptional. Yes, but everybody else speculates it could be otherwise. Did I say anything about speculation right now? Well, no. But you understand. Scientists, those who would claim to now have no religious interest, they can explain, they even try now, whatever the latest term is, they are trying to come up with mathematical models of speculating how there are parallel universes, or how this reality may intersect with another one, so that which appears to disappear, since they have already established for a good three-dimensional laws of physics, the old idea of nothing is created, nothing is destroyed, and now they're beginning to find out, well, there should have seemed to be some holes in that. Let's don't talk about it publicly, but things seem to operate in a weird way. Wait a minute. In some way, there could be other realities in which we are intersecting that we're not normally aware of. There's something going on out there in space. All this weirdness, all this stuff that we can't see, all these blank spaces in our cosmological maps is reflected here. It could be that things are coming and going, and they don't mean flying saucers. They're talking about, as they call it, actual physical reality is not totally accounted for, nor is it consistently accounted for, and there does seem to be exceptions, growing exceptions in their perception of the dictum that nothing can be created and nothing can be destroyed. So it's all the way from scientists who would claim to be, let us say, non-religious, to the continual religious, to the just sort of New Age philosophical, thinking about life after death and reincarnation. Again, may I point out the slipperiness with which life deals with man's mind, that the very things they're talking about that seems to be the exception is actually the proof. It is based upon it being caught within this closed system. Is why it dreams otherwise. I just knew that would go over, just like my horny roundman in an army blanket. Well, and the itchy nose. I don't think most of you understood that. It's when somebody's talking about you. We're going to have to move this operation out of Vancouver and take it back to Arkansas, where it belongs, where people understand proverbial wisdom, at least on a hot day when the stream's running fast and somebody points out they don't have a paddle. There is, I refer you back now to your own mind, regardless of the fact that this still has validity, even at a cosmological level, and to a religious, social level. But why is it that there would be, if there's one school that would only allow people in once they were at the age of 65, let's say, and then I suggest to you that there had to be schools that wouldn't let you in unless you were under the age of 21, then what would be involved, and what would that have to do with your own thinking? Without a sense of urgency, men will find no interest in anything, be it physical or intellectual. That was one item tonight. There was another one that pointed out that was entitled, How Life Keeps Too Many People from Trying to Become Mystics. And there are two ways. One is that it'll take people who once believed they wanted to be mystics and kind of slapped them around. It just went away. It made them become religious. That's the easiest way. That is the old folks' home of the would-be mystical, is religion. In fact, I don't know what religion would do were it not for washed out, burnt out, over the hill, and they could be young, you understand, mystics, would-be mystics. That was one way. The other way was, which I know we don't want to go into, the other way was that anybody that ploy didn't work on, it made them think that they were mystics. I knew I spoke for you in advance. To say that there would be two schools and one would only allow people in, no matter how sincere, no matter what they were willing to devote, they were willing to give up their everyday life and come there and devote their energy to this kind of struggle, that's still right on the surface. The first question was, are you 65? And if not, they couldn't get in. Then the other extreme being, they say, are you over 21? They go, yes, you couldn't get in. What would be another way to look at this? The other way would be to look within this closed system that one can either be too full, too satisfied, too weary, which fits one of those definitions, not only adult, but real adult. I should have put it, didn't sound quite as scientific. Grown up. Because some people can be adult and they're not grown up. If you're grown up, you're your parents. The danger, well, the situation is, before we call it a danger, is that you become either at one end too full, too satisfied, too tired, just too weary. The other extreme would be that you are too young, too anxious, and too raw. If everyone understands raw, that's right, you're not all everybody from Arkansas. Raw boned, which has more connotations than just, that's raw boned. The hell with you. You should have been from Arkansas like any good mister would have been. Well, you're bucolic, you're naive, but none of this is in either an absolute negative or positive sense. It's just you're a kid in a, put in quotation marks, that you've been snatched out. This is when you're too blah, blah, blah. That is too young, too anxious, too raw-boned. It's like you're yanked out, or you try to even make yourself get yanked out from the farm. You still got the bird seed and the cow dew on your foot, and suddenly you in some way have weaseled your way in to an upper class cocktail party. And you've already read a few books on how to be a gentleman. And you've been practicing holding glasses, and at any rate you get there and you're still too raw-boned. The difference between the dancer and the ballroom is still too stark. And it's not that me using all that time on the kid rather than the grown-up. It's not that one is worse than the other. But inside of your own brain, here's what you're left with. When you start out and you have this sort of interest, there is an urgency about it. I could have said excitement, but we've been through several definitions. If you actually didn't end up right now, either here or people watching this on TV, and have an interest in matters like this, it is really no more than entertainment, unless at one time there was an extreme sense of urgency to it. But as parallels everything extraordinary, there was also with ordinary kids, ordinary people, a sense of urgency about being alive to start with. God, I want to be rich. God, I would like to be able to pick up good-looking women like the one going by in that Rolls Royce with that guy. Boy, I wish I was as rich as him. Boy, I wish I was as famous as so-and-so musician or painter. There is a kind of urgency. It is not intellectual. It's hormonal. God, I wish I could grow up. That's what it amounts to. God, I wish I could grow up. But by grow up, you mean, I don't wait around here to be rich and famous. I want it now. Then you go past a certain age, if you're still floating down the regular Arkansas streams of life, clutching on to proverbial wisdom. There then comes a time, and it sneaketh up on one to redig, or to freshly dig, biblical sounding flim-flam, rattletrap. It sneaketh up on one like a porch climber in the night. That before you know it, there is no sense of urgency. That didn't sound right. Before you know it, that does sound like a preacher, like, oh boy, you better straighten up. Anybody listening to this, you're either too young for that to make any sense, or else you're too old and you don't want to hear it. There are only a few people that can still straddle and hold on to both ends of that kind of tightrope. Put another way, there are only a few people ever alive on this planet whose thinking can expand in such a way that they understand the closed system, that they understand there is no new generation. I mean, there's some people dressed different, but if you get old enough, you go, wait a minute, they're not dressed that different. I remember my grandmother dressed that way. You understand that there is no great literal extreme between a kid and a grown-up, between up and down, which was one tonight that said, was pointing out what life actually consisted of, the drama of man's life. And I listed all those new list of kind of opposing forces that is made up of. The world of man, the birth and the rebirth was made up of, if I can remember myself, proposals, dash, objections, acceptance, dash, rejections, constructions, dash, demolitions, inventions, dash, improvements, point, counterpoint, me, you. And it said beyond that, implying that that about covered it, that beyond that, the only thing left is the world of the mystic, wherein there is no such pushing and pulling and back and forth. Oh yeah? A poem. See, that was the title. Ready? Oh yeah? The extraordinary mind is one to understand that as long as you're alive intellectual on this planet, you are trapped, at least at that level, within this. Oh yeah? That was the poem. Oh yeah? And it said, nah, the exception is, and then the poem said, oh yeah? The distinction being if you understand it, and that you understand that there is no way out of a closed system, which is my ordinary thinking. And to look for it, to deal on the basis, to have objections, to think that you're mulling over philosophical possibilities or theological possibilities on the basis of, count, counterpoint, this kind of perhaps new idea, this proposal, and yet I have enough of my old way of thinking. There's been enough proven. I know this seems to be a new idea regarding the nature of man, and I like it. I like the concept. But, that's a dash, but you cannot take all of the conventional collective wisdom of humanity, as that sounds like, and just go, That helps keep people not in this, in the closed system, because they are in the closed system are not getting out. But it keeps them think that in some way they are participating, that in some way that there could be a way out. But under certain conditions, we don't want a way out. That was what that little thing I just did of going, well, I heard this new idea about the nature of life. Parts of it I liked. Don't bother with the outline. But parts of it I liked. And yet, if I took it as far as I think he's saying, it'd be too far. That we can't take all of that which is decent, all that which has been proven through the experience of man, all that has been made obvious to us through our charitable good works and through learning from our evil deeds in the past, speaking collectively. Of others, we can't just take all of that just because this new idea sounds sort of interesting and intriguing. We can't take it as being literal, total fact, because if we did, then we'd have to take everything else. We'd have to take the history of man as I know it, being a reasonably educated man, and we just go, no. Change is good, but you can be too hasty. Let me write that down. You know? I mean, it's as if the ordinary mind operates as if there's a possibility that I might get outside this system. Put another way, the mind operates on the basis of how remember one of the ways that life keeps too many people from trying to be a mystic? Is life operates in such a way that many men's mind think, well, I could sure think of things extraordinary, but wait a minute. That might not be such a good idea. You understand? As long as you do that, if you treat the possibility as a given, oh, come on. All right, how about this? There's a piece, let's go back to ordinary life right quick. Real ordinary life. The world of commerce and advertising. There is an advertising program going on now, a campaign for a weight loss operation. It is so astounding. It should win every award, whether they call them the Cleos or whatever awards they give, but I guarantee you it won't. I can't believe, hardly, figuratively speaking, it's lasted this long. Well, I only heard it a couple of times, so I don't know how long. It is so good that they won't even notice it. It's not even going to be, it can't last long. Anyway, it's like this. It's always, evidently it's pretty common, all these places out in malls that, join up and lose weight. And they have all sorts of, now I'm talking about a gym, it's these places that God knows what they do, but it's join up. Well, obviously a large part of it is support group and somebody to talk to you and Or if you like remember my old story about the guy who would cure all your problems, all you had to do was write them, tell them to him, and then pay your money. And he said, don't come back, don't bother me, I'll take care of it. This is anyway, here's the way it goes. And you probably heard it, and you didn't even stop and give it the honor, the awe it deserves. Well, I see they have the ads out about special price that you join up with such and such weight club for, whatever it is, special this month, it's only $20 a month instead of our regular price or whatever. This one anyway goes through, and the punchline is, the thrust of the campaign, if it lasted a day or so, the thrust was, for a limited time only, for only $1 a pound, lose all the weight you want. Do you understand? It is magnificent because it is given, the success is offered as a given. It's not, will you come and lose weight? It says, lose all you want for $1 a pound. They are on $1 a pound for a limited time. And you know what the mind's supposed to work, which I'm sure it did work a little bit, probably worked too good. Life just has a way that things like that, it goes, come on. Especially if it's somebody that didn't know what they were doing. It treats it as a given. It's not, will you lose weight? It's a sale that lose all you want for a limited time, but lose all you want for $1 a pound. And you'd see people think, well, how much money can I afford? I got 12. That, if you don't know where we were, that is what I was exactly trying to get you to consider. That is the same sort of thing of which man cannot be made continually aware. The mind operates on the basis that I could. Hey, I can lose all the weight I want. The way I present it to you, I could think anything I want to. I can think outside my normal realm. I mean, I can do that. The danger probably is overdoing it. Right. Well, it's a good thing those same people, which is almost everybody, does not have 12 extra bucks in their pocket and a few extra pounds, because if they'd heard that, they'd been goners. $1 a pound? Well, can I borrow some money? It's no longer a question of, will I lose weight? It's how much can you afford to lose? It's not. So, the other way, it's not a danger of people ever facing up to the fact that, my mind lives within a closed system. My mind is, for those of you who didn't like it, that there was a band of mystics supposedly on one world who decided, they pictured the physical universe as, those of you that think I got the paper upside down, they pictured the physical universe as an allegorical microcosm of their own mind. Repetition sucks, repetition sucks, repetition sucks. I wouldn't have been that crude. I would have said repetition doesn't normally do any good, repetition doesn't normally do any good. But see, the human mind, without ordinarily conceiving of it or analyzing it in this way, they treat the ability to think outside the closed system that is the mind itself, they treat it as a given. The ad, lose all the weight you want for $1 a pound. For $1 a pound. You don't go, well, wait a minute, I can't lose weight. I've spent, my last estimate, I've spent over $22,000 over the last 10 years trying to lose weight. And I've never lost a pound. But it goes by real fast. It says, lose all the weight you want for $1 a pound. $1 a pound? All right, the other variation would have been, yeah, you can think anything you want to, but don't overdo it. And you think, well, yeah. And if you don't understand, well, you're supposed to understand. If you're saying you understand, well, if I thought too many new thoughts, I wouldn't even be myself. And the real distinct possibility is that in some way you'll do yourself intellectual damage. In other words, you might drive yourself nuts. That if you tried to do it. But it's taken as a given. Oh, yeah, it's not that I couldn't think something other than I think. But, why should I? What would be the purpose? And always the danger that you might overdo it, which is a fact, which is life. It's not men sitting around operating on the theoretical basis of which they've conjured, and it's not them even mouthing anything that they have any understanding of. It is life itself, mulling, talking to itself through man, constantly, out of 6 billion thoughts going on at any given time, thinking about right on the edge over here of things that really never thought about, things that are actually pushing the limits, the reality of a weight loss clinic. And it has to kind of back off, and push it a little more, and it backs off. But it has some people it is life itself, the needs of life itself, that has the story harmoniously already put out there. Well, and it ends up here, the people go, well, I could think differently. If they're in some way accused in a certain way, they find themselves in a uncomfortable, if not untenable, intellectual position. They go, well, wait a minute. And somebody says, well, see, I told you before, you are too rigid in your thinking about what it was, religion, politics. And the person goes, well, yeah, well, I guess we all have certain little foibles somewhere, but, geez, once you come up with your own kind of intellectual model and paradigm of what reality is and the way things should be, you can't just suddenly go, oh, well, all my life I've been a Nebraskan type, old wool hat Democrat, patriotic to my country. I'm not going to suddenly go, hey, I'll pose like this and I'll pretend that I am a neo-fascist and I'll pretend I'm the great-great-grandson of Mussolini. There you go, something. I can't do that. It's insane. And even if I tried, something not quite that extreme, but a person would think, well, even if I tried, I might lose too much weight. I might overdo it. Remember? The same person goes, well, $1 a pound. Yeah, but you spent $22,000 and you never lost a pound. Oh, I might overdo it. What do you mean overdo it? You've never done it. Yeah, but I might. Does anyone know how this is connected to preaching to the converted? Who the hell is a mystic going to talk to? People say, I want new information. The title of tonight's sermon was Preaching to the Converted, Entertainment. I didn't get around to hardly any of it, but preaching to the converted, entertainment, and the matter of true information. Not correct information, true information. Who wants to hear new information? A lot of people say, well, I do. All right. Can you? Well, sure I can. Danger is, it's really got to be true information. I'm not going to come listen to hear some kind of weird claptrap that somebody just made up to get me all excited. When's the last time you got all excited intellectually? Well, yeah, but I could lose too much weight. I could think too many new thoughts. Why is it? The other subtitle, why would someone who understands, why would somebody get up publicly, stand up and talk about this? Who are you going to talk to is the point. You almost got to talk to the converted. You almost got to preach to the converted, in spite of what I already pointed out there. Well, what the sense in that? Well, who else is going to listen? Well, if they think it's entertainment, yeah, but then all the matters of entertainment turns into seriousness. People think that there's a difference between entertainment and seriousness. Is the tape out? We're never going to finish. Well, I was going to say we're going to finish this tonight. Yeah, we're not going to finish tonight. Well, be sure and tune in next time when we won't ever mention this again.